Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Birthday Surprise. Vaughn Mercer stared at the cream-colored invitation in his hand, tracing the embossed lettering with his thumb. Natalie's 35th birthday celebration. His ex-wife of 2 years, celebrating in the sprawling lake house that had once been their shared dream. Now she lived there with Bradley Hoffman, the man she'd married just 8 months after their divorce was finalized. "You don't have to go, Dad," Lily said, her 7-year-old eyes wise beyond their years as she packed her overnight bag. "I can tell Mom you had to work." Vaughn knelt down to her level. "And miss dropping you off?" "Never. Besides, your mom and I agreed to be civil for your sake." What he didn't say was that he would endure far worse than an awkward social gathering to ensure he never missed a moment of Lily's life. The custody arrangement already took too much from him. Every other weekend and Wednesday dinners hardly seemed enough to watch his daughter grow. "Bradley doesn't like when you come inside," Lily said matter-of-factly. Vaughn kept his expression neutral, though his jaw tightened. "Well, that's Bradley's problem, isn't it?" The lake house loomed ahead as Vaughn's Audi wound down the private drive. Natalie had insisted on keeping it in the divorce, the place where they'd spent their first 5 anniversaries before buying it outright. Now, it was transformed, the rustic charm he'd loved replaced with sleek, modern furnishings. Even the exterior had been painted from warm cedar to sterile white. Cars lined the circular driveway. He recognized Natalie's parents' Lexus and several vehicles belonging to friends who'd chosen sides after the divorce. None had chosen his. "Lily!" Natalie exclaimed as they entered, her smile faltering when she spotted Vaughn. She wore a form-fitting black dress, her blonde hair styled in loose waves. "I didn't expect you to come in. Just dropping off the birthday girl," Vaughn said, handing Lily's overnight bag to Natalie. "Happy birthday." Before Natalie could respond, Theodore and Diana Keller approached, their faces hardening at the sight of their former son-in-law. Behind them, Bradley emerged from the crowd, his arm possessively circling Natalie's waist. "Vaughn," Theodore said coldly. "What a surprise." "Hardly a welcome one," Diana muttered, loud enough for Vaughn to hear. Bradley smirked. "Why are you even here?" he asked, as Diana and Theodore laughed in response. The tension was palpable. Vaughn had faced worse in his years as a private security specialist. Warlords and criminals had tried to intimidate him in ways these suburban socialites couldn't imagine. But something in their collective dismissal cut deeper than he cared to admit. "Dad's bringing me to Mom's party," Lily said defensively, moving closer to Vaughn. Bradley bent down to Lily's level, his voice saccharine. "Sweetie, why don't you go find the other kids? They're in the game room, downstairs." "Actually," Lily said, grabbing Vaughn's hand with unexpected urgency, "Dad, we need to leave. Something's wrong." The room fell silent. Vaughn looked into his daughter's eyes and saw genuine fear there. He gave a quiet nod. "I think we'll skip the party after all," Vaughn said calmly. "Seems Lily's not feeling up to it." Natalie stepped forward, her expression shifting from embarrassment to concern. "What's wrong, honey? Are you sick?" "She's fine," Bradley interjected. "She just wants attention." Vaughn felt Lily's grip tighten, her small fingers digging into his palm. Years of training had taught him to recognize warning signs, and every instinct told him his daughter's fear was genuine. "We're leaving," he said firmly. "I'll bring her back tomorrow." "You can't just change the custody schedule whenever you want," Natalie protested, but there was something off about her reaction, more calculated than concerned. Theodore stepped forward aggressively. "Now listen here, Mercer. You don't get to waltz in and disrupt Natalie's special day." As the confrontation escalated, Vaughn noticed something strange. A man standing near the bar was watching the scene with unusual intensity. He wasn't part of Natalie's usual social circle. Vaughn would have remembered him. The stranger caught Vaughn's eye briefly before turning away. "I'll call you later," Vaughn told Natalie, already guiding Lily toward the door. Outside, Lily remained silent until they were safely in the car and down the driveway. "You need to drive fast, Dad," she whispered, looking over her shoulder. "What's going on, Lily Pad? What scared you in there?" Her voice trembled. "I heard Bradley and that man with the scar talking in the study. They said they were going to take care of loose ends tonight." She paused, eyes wide. "Dad, they said your name." As Vaughn's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel, a black SUV appeared in his rearview mirror, accelerating rapidly behind them. Chapter 2: Dead Drops and Revelations. The SUV hung back just enough to maintain visual contact without being obvious, a textbook surveillance technique that Vaughn recognized instantly. He'd performed the same maneuver countless times during his 12 years with Sentinel Security Group before starting his own consulting firm. "Lily, I need you to get down," Vaughn instructed calmly, his mind racing through contingency plans. "Lie on the floor behind my seat and stay there until I say it's safe." "Are the bad men following us?" Lily asked, her voice remarkably steady as she unbuckled and slid down. "Just being cautious," Vaughn replied, taking a sharp turn onto a side road. The SUV followed. Confirmation. Vaughn's training took over. He'd spent years protecting high-value targets in hostile environments across the globe. Now, the most precious cargo he'd ever transported was his daughter, and someone was trailing them with unknown intent. He needed a defensible position and information. 20 minutes of evasive driving later, Vaughn pulled into the underground parking garage of an office building where his friend Dominic Rizzo maintained a private security firm. "Stay close," he instructed Lily as they hurried through the service entrance and up to Dominic's empty office suite. Vaughn used his emergency key and quickly disabled the alarm. "Uncle Dom's not here?" Lily asked, looking around the darkened office. "He's in Dallas this week," Vaughn replied, moving to the security console. "But his systems are always working." He pulled up the exterior cameras, confirming the black SUV had not followed them into the garage. For now, they were clear. "Lily," Vaughn said gently, kneeling before his daughter, "I need you to tell me everything you heard at the party, even things that might not seem important." Lily's account was fragmented but disturbing. Bradley and a man she described as having an angry line on his face, presumably a scar, had been discussing something involving offshore accounts, a timeline that had been accelerated, and Vaughn being a problem that needed handling. "They seemed scared when they talked about a woman named Portia," Lily added. "Bradley said she was getting suspicious and might talk to you." The name hit Vaughn like a physical blow. Portia Devereux had been Natalie's best friend since college, and the one person who had reached out to Vaughn after the divorce, hinting that there was more to the breakup than he knew. They'd met for coffee once, 3 months ago, but she'd been vague and seemed frightened. She'd promised to contact him again with proof, but never did. Vaughn had dismissed it as divorce drama at the time, focusing instead on rebuilding his life and being there for Lily. Now, he wondered if that had been a catastrophic mistake. While Lily dozed on the office couch, Vaughn began pulling threads. A deep search on Bradley Hoffman revealed inconsistencies in his background. The successful investment advisor persona showed cracks under scrutiny, periodic employment gaps, sudden relocations, and a suspicious absence of digital footprint before 2015. More disturbing was what Vaughn found on Theodore Keller, Natalie's father. The retired banking executive had been investigated twice by federal authorities for suspicious financial transactions. Both cases were abruptly closed without charges. The lead investigators subsequently transferred or retired. By midnight, Vaughn had compiled enough to suspect he'd barely scratched the surface of whatever was happening. He needed more resources and a safe place for Lily. A text message alert broke his concentration. An unknown number with a single message. Portia Devereux found dead in her apartment. Apparent suicide. Police involved. Watch yourself. Vaughn stared at his phone, ice forming in his veins. The message could only have come from one of his former colleagues at Sentinel, people who monitored police bands and kept tabs on potential security threats. Something much darker than a bitter ex-wife and her arrogant new husband was unfolding. Vaughn made 3 calls, one to his sister Renee to arrange emergency care for Lily, one to his attorney to document the custody situation, and one to a former associate who specialized in deep background investigations. By dawn, Lily was safely with his sister in a vacation cabin outside cell coverage, and Vaughn was back at his condo, methodically preparing for what was coming. He pulled his go bag from the hidden compartment in his closet. Cash, untraceable burner phones, and a Glock 19 he'd carried during his most sensitive operations overseas. As he loaded the weapon, Natalie's frantic voice filled his voicemail. "Where the hell are you with my daughter? Bradley's calling the police for kidnapping. This is insane, Vaughn. Whatever you think you're doing." He deleted the message and powered down his primary phone. The rules had changed. Someone had killed Portia to keep her quiet, and they wouldn't hesitate to eliminate him next. But unlike Portia, Vaughn wasn't easily eliminated. And now, he had something much more powerful than evidence. He had purpose. Chapter 3: The Devil's Ledger. Rain lashed against the windows of the abandoned waterfront warehouse as Vaughn waited, the cavernous space illuminated only by the faint glow of the city skyline. He checked his watch, 2:37 a.m., and adjusted his position behind a stack of rotting pallets. Franklin Wells was 20 minutes late, which was unlike the fastidious former CIA analyst. In their years working together at Sentinel, Wells had earned the nickname Clockwork for his precision. A delay meant complications. The heavy metal door finally creaked open, and Wells slipped inside, his raincoat glistening with moisture. He moved cautiously, scanning the shadows before approaching the meeting point. "You look like shit, Mercer," Wells said by way of greeting, his voice barely audible over the rain hammering the metal roof. 3 days of digging through other people's nightmares will do that, Vaughn replied. "Tell me you found something." Wells placed a weatherproof case on the ground between them. "I found the Devil's Ledger." He glanced nervously toward the door. "You were right about Bradley Hoffman. The man doesn't exist, at least not before 2015. His real name is Preston Rayburn, former financial operations specialist for a private military contractor called Obsidian Solutions Group. Never heard of them. That's by design. They operate in the spaces between official military operations and corporate interests. Very illegal, very profitable. Your ex-father-in-law, Theodore Keller, was their banking connection through Heritage Trust." Vaughn processed this information, the pieces starting to align. "And Natalie?" Wells looked uncomfortable. "That's where it gets complicated. I can't tell if she's a victim or a participant. Either way, she's in deep." He tapped the case. "Everything's in there. Account numbers, transactions, identities. Enough to bury them all. And Portia Devereux officially ruled a suicide yesterday. Unofficially, Wells grimaced. The ME's preliminary report noted defensive wounds inconsistent with self-harm. Someone made it look like she killed herself. Vaughn had suspected as much. Portia had been trying to warn him months ago, and it had cost her life. "There's more," Wells continued. "Obsidian is preparing for something big. Multiple offshore transfers, new identities being established. Whatever they've been doing, they're getting ready to disappear. With my daughter?" Vaughn's voice had a dangerous edge. "The paperwork I found includes passport documentation for Natalie and a minor female. Different last name, but the birth date matches your daughter's." Vaughn had suspected this since finding the transaction records for a private air charter scheduled 3 days from now. Destination Sao Paulo, connecting to an undisclosed final location. "You need to take this to the FBI," Wells urged. "This is bigger than personal revenge, Vaughn. These people have government contracts, connections in intelligence communities. They've eliminated witnesses before. Like they'll eliminate Lily if she becomes inconvenient." Vaughn asked coldly, "How long would a federal investigation take? Months? Years? By then, my daughter will be gone." Wells sighed, recognizing the resolved expression on his former colleague's face. "What's your play, then?" "I'm going to dismantle their operation, piece by piece," Vaughn said, opening the case to review its contents. "Starting tonight." Among the documents was a detailed dossier on the scarred man Lily had described. Malcolm Reeves, Obsidian's head of security and former Special Forces operator with a troubling record of problem-solving. "One last thing," Wells said, handing Vaughn a flash drive. "Security footage from Portia Devereux's apartment building the night she died. Took some doing to get this. Shows Reeves entering her building at 11:42 p.m., leaving at 12:17 a.m. Her time of death was estimated between 11:30 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. Vaughn pocketed the drive. "You should disappear for a while, Franklin. Take that vacation to New Zealand you've been talking about." "Already booked," Wells confirmed. "Vaughn," he hesitated. "The woman you married." Either she's been living a double life for years, or she's been systematically deceived by these people. Either way, she's not who you thought she was. The revelation should have hurt, but Vaughn felt only cold resolve. The Natalie he'd loved, or thought he'd loved, had vanished long ago, replaced by a stranger wearing his wife's face. "Get going," Vaughn said. "And Wells?" "Thank you." After Wells departed, Vaughn remained in the warehouse, methodically reviewing the evidence and formulating his strategy. The documents revealed a complex network of financial crimes spanning 5 countries, with Theodore Keller and Bradley/Preston at the center. Obsidian had been laundering money through Heritage Trust for years, while using its security operations as cover for activities too terrible to contemplate. But the most sickening discovery came when Vaughn accessed the encrypted files on the flash drive. Beyond the security footage of Reeves entering Porsche's building was a folder labeled Leverage containing surveillance photos of him and Lily at the park, at her school, outside his condo. They'd been watching his daughter, documenting her movements, preparing to use her as collateral. As dawn broke over the city, Von Mercer made a vow. The people who threatened his daughter wouldn't face justice in a courtroom. They would face him, and he would be neither swift nor merciful. He began with a series of phone calls to former associates across the globe, specialists who operated in the shadows and owed him favors. By noon, his plan was in motion. Not the desperate actions of a wronged ex-husband, but the precise, calculated strategy of a man who had spent his career anticipating and neutralizing threats. The first strike would come that very night. Chapter 4. First Blood. The exclusive Oakmont Country Club hummed with subdued conversation as the city's elite gathered for the annual charity gala. At a corner table in the cigar lounge, Theodore Keller held court with 3 other men, their faces flushed from expensive scotch and self-importance. "The Shanghai deal closes next week," Theodore was saying. "Another $30 million moving through the Cayman account." Scott Levinson, Heritage Trust compliance officer, shifted uncomfortably. "We need to discuss the recent Federal Banking Commission inquiries, Theodore. They're asking specific questions about transaction patterns." "They always ask questions," Theodore dismissed with a wave. "That's why we pay Senator Wilmington's consultation fees." From his position at the bar, Vaughn observed the interaction through the reflection in the mirror behind the bottles. The electronic device in his pocket had been capturing every word of Theodore's conversation for the past 40 minutes. The bartender slid another bourbon toward Vaughn. Compliments of the gentleman at the end of the bar. Vaughn turned, surprised to find Malcolm Reeves, the scarred man from Natalie's party, watching him with cold calculation. Their eyes met, an unspoken challenge passing between them. After a moment, Vaughn picked up his drink and walked over. "Bold move, approaching me in public," Vaughn said, taking the seat beside Reeves. "Professional courtesy," Reeves replied. "One operator to another. I've reviewed your file. Impressive work in Tehran. In Bogota. I'm retired. No one with your skill set truly retires, Mr. Mercer. They just change employers." Reeves sipped his whiskey. "You've been making inquiries. Accessing systems you shouldn't. Looking into matters that don't concern you. When someone puts surveillance on my daughter, it becomes my concern." Reeves didn't bother denying it. "Insurance. Nothing more. Your ex-wife is valuable to certain interests. By extension, so is the child. You killed Portia Devereux. Let's call an unfortunate business necessity. She became unreliable." Reeves leaned closer. "This conversation is a professional courtesy. A warning. Stand down. Whatever you think you know, whatever evidence you believe you have, it won't matter. The people I work for exist beyond accountability." Vaughn's expression remained impassive. "Is that what you told Portia before you staged her suicide?" Something dangerous flashed in Reeves' eyes. "Your daughter seems happy with her mother and stepfather. It would be a shame to traumatize her with unnecessary complications." "You threatened my daughter again," Vaughn said quietly, "and they won't find enough of you to identify." Reeves smirked. Brave words from a man outmatched and outnumbered. He stood, dropping cash on the bar. "This is your only warning, Mercer. Next time won't be a conversation." After Reeves departed, Vaughn remained for another 20 minutes, watching Theodore's group break up. When Theodore headed for the restroom, Vaughn followed. The ornate bathroom was empty except for the two of them. Theodore froze when he saw Vaughn's reflection in the mirror. "What the hell are you doing here?" Theodore demanded, turning to face his former son-in-law. "I know about Obsidian," Vaughn said calmly. "I know about the money laundering through Heritage Trust. I know you're planning to disappear with Natalie and my daughter." The color drained from Theodore's face. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Portia Devereux tried to warn me. You had her killed." "I didn't," Theodore began, then caught himself. "Whatever you think you know, you can't prove it. And if you could, you wouldn't be here alone. You'd have brought authorities." "I'm not interested in legal justice," Vaughn replied. "Just justice." "Are you threatening me?" Theodore's indignation barely masked his fear. "I'm promising you this. If you try to take my daughter out of the country, I will dismantle everything you've built. Everyone you care about will watch as you're exposed and ruined." Theodore's shock transformed into cruel amusement. "You still don't get it, do you? Natalie never loved you. You were useful, a security expert with connections and no family complications. She married you on my instruction. Your function was to provide cover and legitimacy while we expanded operations." The revelation landed like a physical blow, but Vaughn's expression remained unchanged. "And Lily, an unfortunate complication. Natalie was supposed to remain childless, but she became attached to the idea of motherhood." Theodore straightened his tie. "You've wasted enough of my time with these melodramatic accusations. Stay away from my family, or the consequences will be severe." As Theodore moved to leave, Vaughn placed a hand on his shoulder. "One last thing." He held up his phone, showing Theodore the active recording. "Your conversation about the Shanghai deal and Senator Wilmington has already been sent to 3 separate secure locations. If anything happens to me or Lily, it goes to the FBI, Interpol, and the Wall Street Journal simultaneously." Theodore's face contorted with rage. "You're playing a dangerous game." "No," Vaughn replied. "I'm ending one." Later that night, Scott Levinson, Heritage Trust compliance officer, received an anonymous package containing irrefutable evidence of Theodore Keller's financial crimes, along with details of Obsidian's operations. By morning, he would deliver it all to the Federal Banking Commission, setting in motion the first phase of Vaughn's plan. Meanwhile, in a luxury downtown apartment, Malcolm Reeves discovered his secure personal server had been breached, all files copied and deleted. His offshore accounts were emptied, digital identity erased. On his bathroom mirror, written in his own shaving cream, "First warning." The hunt had begun. Chapter 5. The Hourglass Turns. Morning sunlight streamed through the blinds of the safe house apartment as Vaughn reviewed the latest intelligence from his network. Heritage Trust was in chaos. The Federal Banking Commission had arrived unannounced at 8 a.m. with a warrant, and Theodore Keller had been escorted from the building in full view of his employees. It would be hours before he secured bail. The burner phone on the table buzzed. A text from his sister. "Lily's safe. No unusual activity. She misses you." Vaughn allowed himself a moment of relief before refocusing. The clock was ticking. With Theodore detained, Obsidian would accelerate their evacuation plans. He needed to move quickly. The television news played in the background. A reporter standing outside Heritage Trust headquarters. Allegations of extensive money laundering and securities fraud. Sources close to the investigation suggest connections to international arms dealing through a private military contractor. Vaughn's phone buzzed again, this time his primary cell phone, which he kept powered off except for brief checks. 17 missed calls from Natalie, 3 from Bradley, and a voicemail from his attorney. He listened to the attorney's message first. "Vaughn, they filed emergency custody modification papers alleging parental kidnapping. Judge Hanscom granted a temporary order. You need to produce Lily immediately or face criminal charges. Call me." Next came Natalie's latest voicemail, her voice eerily calm. "Vaughn, you've put us in an impossible position. Whatever you think you know, you're wrong. Bradley and I just want what's best for Lily. Bring her home, and we can talk this through like adults. Please, before this gets any worse." The calculated manipulation in her tone confirmed what Theodore had revealed. Natalie had never been who she pretended to be. The woman he'd loved, the mother of his child, had been a carefully constructed fiction. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. 3 short raps, a pause, then 2 more, the arranged signal. Vaughn checked the peephole before admitting Gabriella Acosta, a former intelligence analyst who now worked as a private investigator. "You look terrible," she observed, setting down her laptop bag. "Sleeping's overrated," Vaughn replied. "What did you find?" "Your ex-wife's been busy," Gabriella said, opening her laptop. "In the past 48 hours, she's liquidated over $2 million in assets and transferred the funds through a series of shell companies. Classic laundering pattern. Destination: final transfer went to an account in the Cayman Islands registered to a company called Blue Horizon Ventures. Obsidian subsidiary," Vaughn noted. "They're preparing to run." Gabriella nodded. "There's more. Bradley Hoffman, or Preston Rayburn, whatever he's calling himself, has been making calls to a private airfield outside the city. Changed their departure time from Friday to tomorrow night." The accelerated timeline was concerning but not unexpected. With Theodore compromised and Vaughn clearly onto them, they would be desperate to escape. "What about Malcolm Reeves?" Gabriella's expression turned grim. "He's gone completely dark since his accounts were drained. But before he disappeared, he made contact with these 3 individuals." She displayed photos of hard-looking men, former Obsidian operatives, professional hitters. "He's assembling a kill team," Vaughn concluded. "Most likely. And based on their movement patterns, they're already in the city." Vaughn considered this development. Reeves was dangerous alone. With a team of trained killers, the threat level increased exponentially. "There's one more thing you should see," Gabriella said, pulling up an email thread. "I managed to access Bradley's secure server. These communications between him and Theodore Keller go back 7 years, including detailed discussions of using you for operational cover and exit strategy if things went south." Vaughn scanned the emails, his expression hardening as he read the clinical assessment of his vulnerabilities, the cold calculation of how his security expertise could benefit their operation, how his love for Natalie made him easy to manipulate. One passage stood out with sickening clarity. "Mercer's background is perfect, orphaned at 12, minimal family connections, devoted to his career. Once Natalie establishes the relationship, his protective instincts will make him putty in her hands. The marriage needs to last 3 to 5 years minimum for optimal credibility." Vaughn had always believed his orphan status and self-reliance were strengths. These people had seen them as exploitable weaknesses. "They've been planning this for years," he said quietly. "It gets worse," Gabriella replied, showing him another document. "Contingency plans for asset removal if you became problematic. They were prepared to eliminate you from the beginning." The final piece clicked into place. His marriage, his life with Natalie, all of it had been an elaborate cover operation. The only real thing to come from it was Lily, and even she had been viewed as a complication rather than a child. "What's your next move?" Gabriella asked. Vaughn closed the laptop. "I need to see Natalie. Face to face. That's suicide with Reeves hunting you." "I'm counting on it," Vaughn replied. "Give me everything on the private airfield, security layouts, personnel, flight plans. And I need eyes on Bradley. If he moves, I want to know." After Gabriella left, Vaughn prepared for the confrontation ahead. He cleaned his weapon, methodically checked his equipment, and reviewed the intelligence again. The pieces were in place. Now he needed to force his opponents to make their move. He sent a text message to Natalie from a burner phone. "We need to talk. Alone. About Lily's future. Meet me at Westlake Park near the fountain. 3 p.m. Come alone, or I release everything I have to the authorities." The response came within minutes. "I'll be there." Vaughn knew she wouldn't come alone. Bradley would insist on protection, especially with Reeves available. They would see this as an opportunity to eliminate the threat he posed, secure Lily's location, and proceed with their escape plan. It was exactly what he was counting on. At precisely 2:45 p.m., Vaughn entered Westlake Park from the south entrance, keeping to the crowded areas as he made his way toward the fountain. He spotted Natalie immediately, her blonde hair catching the afternoon sun as she sat on a bench, sunglasses concealing her eyes. What she didn't realize was that Vaughn had arrived 90 minutes earlier to position resources and identify the trap they'd set. From his vantage point, he could see the two men in casual clothes positioned at the north and east entrances. A third man sat reading a newspaper on a bench with clear sight lines to Natalie. Malcolm Rees himself would be coordinating from a distance, likely from one of the overlooking buildings. Vaughn approached Natalie from behind, noting how she tensed when she sensed his presence. "Hello, Natalie," he said, taking a seat beside her. "Where should I use your operational designation?" "Siren, wasn't it? From the Project Odysseus files." She removed her sunglasses, her blue eyes cold and calculating, so different from the warm gaze he'd once loved. "You've been busy, so have you. Liquidating assets, preparing new identities, arranging private transportation." "It's not what you think," she said, her voice taking on the concerned tone she'd perfected over their years together. "Theodore's been involved in some questionable business dealings. Bradley and I just found out. We're trying to protect Lily." "Stop lying," Vaughn said quietly. "I know everything. About Obsidian, about your role in the operation, about how you were assigned to marry me as cover." For a moment, Natalie's composure slipped, genuine surprise crossing her features. Then her expression hardened. "Fine. What do you want?" "To understand one thing," Vaughn replied. "Was any of it real? Any moment of our life together?" Natalie hesitated, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. "Lily," she finally said. "Lily wasn't part of the plan. I wasn't supposed to get pregnant. But when it happened," she trailed off, "having her change things. But not enough to stop using her as leverage against me." "We do what's necessary to survive," Natalie replied coldly. "Now, where is she?" "Safe. Beyond your reach." Natalie's eyes narrowed. "Reeves will find her. He finds everyone." "Reeves is otherwise occupied," Vaughn said, nodding slightly toward the north entrance where police officers were now approaching one of the surveillance men. "Anonymous tip about an armed suspect. Same for your east entrance coverage." Alarm spread across Natalie's face as she realized the trap had been reversed. "You can't win this, Vaughn. You don't understand the resources aligned against you." "I understand perfectly," Vaughn replied, standing up. "Give Bradley a message for me. Tell him I'm coming for him next." As he walked away, Natalie called after him. "They'll kill you. You can't protect Lily if you're dead." Vaughn didn't look back. Phase 2 of his plan was now in motion. Chapter 6: Betrayal's Price. The private airfield glowed under security lights as evening descended, its perimeter patrolled by armed guards. Not the typical security for a civilian facility. From his observation position in the tree line, Vaughn counted 6 men with military-grade weapons and tactical movement patterns. Definitely Obsidian personnel. His earpiece crackled. "Perimeter sweep approaching your position," warned Gabriella, who was monitoring the security feed she'd hacked. 30 seconds. Vaughn melted deeper into the shadows as 2 guards passed within yards of his location, their conversation drifting through the darkness. "Triple the detail after what happened to Keller," one was saying. "Rayburn's freaking out. Can you blame him? Someone systematically dismantled our entire operation in 72 hours. You think it's really just the ex-husband? Whoever it is, they're good. Too good." Once they passed, Vaughn continued his approach to the hangar where a Gulfstream G650 was being prepared for departure. According to the flight plan Gabriella had obtained, it was scheduled for a 2 a.m. takeoff, destination Sao Paulo, then onward to an undisclosed location. "I have eyes on primary target," Gabriella reported. "Bradley and Natalie just arrived. 2-vehicle convoy, heavily armed escort." "Any sign of Reeves?" "Negative, but satellite thermal shows 8, possibly 9 armed individuals inside the main hangar. They're expecting trouble. They were right to expect it, though not in the way they anticipated." Vaughn had no intention of assaulting a fortified position held by former Special Forces operators. He had a different approach in mind. "Execute Phase 3, he instructed. Across the city, coordinated events began unfolding. federal agents raided 3 Obsidian front companies based on anonymous tips and documented evidence. Local police, acting on similar information, secured Malcolm Reeves' safe house, finding enough illegal weapons to guarantee federal charges. Most significantly, every major news outlet simultaneously received comprehensive files on Obsidian's illegal operations, complete with Bradley Hoffman/Preston Rayburn's involvement and connections to Theodore Keller. The reaction at the airfield was immediate. Vaughn watched through high-powered binoculars as Bradley emerged from the hangar, shouting into his phone. Even from a distance, the panic in his body language was evident. "They're accelerating departure," Gabriella reported, requesting immediate clearance for takeoff. "Right on schedule," Vaughn replied, making his way toward the administrative building at the far end of the airfield. Unlike the hangar, this structure had minimal security, all attention focused on protecting the aircraft and its passengers. Inside, he moved silently through darkened corridors until he reached the communications room. The lone technician never saw him coming, a pressure point at the base of the neck, rendering him unconscious without injury. Vaughn locked the door and accessed the facility's internal systems. Within minutes, he had control of the airfield's communications, security cameras, and most importantly, the fuel management system for the Gulfstream. "All assets in position," came Gabriella's voice in his ear. "Understood. Go dark until extraction." Vaughn initiated the final sequence, triggering a cascading communications failure across the facility. As emergency protocols activated, the security team's attention divided between the perceived external threat and securing their principal's escape. Through the surveillance system, Vaughn watched Bradley and Natalie being hustled toward the waiting aircraft, surrounded by protective detail. Bradley looked shell-shocked, while Natalie maintained her composure, scanning the surroundings with practiced vigilance. Just before they reached the aircraft, federal helicopters appeared over the horizon, their spotlights cutting through the darkness. The timing was perfect, the result of anonymous tips about illegal weapons and human trafficking operations at the supposedly civilian airfield. Chaos erupted below as Obsidian personnel scrambled to respond to the unexpected development. Bradley and Natalie were rushed back toward the vehicles while guards took defensive positions. In the confusion, no one noticed the figure moving through the shadows toward the main hangar. No one except Natalie, who broke away from her security detail and pursued, drawing a concealed weapon from beneath her jacket. Inside the darkened hangar, Vaughn worked quickly, placing small charges at strategic points around the fuel reserves. Not enough to cause catastrophic damage, just sufficient to ensure the aircraft wouldn't be taking anyone to South America tonight or any other night. "I should have known," came Natalie's voice from behind him. "The others underestimated you. I warned them." Vaughn turned slowly to face his ex-wife, noting the 9mm pistol aimed steadily at his chest. "You always were the smarter one. This won't end well for you," Natalie said, maintaining her distance. "Even if you manage to bring down Obsidian, others will take its place. The same people who protected Theodore all these years will find new assets to control." "Maybe," Vaughn acknowledged, "but they won't have my daughter." Something shifted in Natalie's expression, a flash of genuine emotion breaking through her operational facade. "I do love her, Vaughn. Whatever else was false, that never was. And yet you were prepared to take her away forever, to raise her in a world of criminals and killers." "I was protecting her," Natalie insisted. "You don't understand what these people are capable of." "I understand perfectly," Vaughn replied. "That's why I've spent the last 3 days systematically dismantling their entire operation. Bank accounts frozen, identities compromised, safe houses exposed. By morning, there will be nothing left of Obsidian or anyone connected to it." Fear flashed across Natalie's features. "You can't have reached everyone. The organization is too extensive." "I didn't have to," Vaughn said. "I just had to create enough chaos and uncertainty to turn them against each other. The rest is happening on its own. Your father already offered testimony against Bradley in exchange for witness protection. And Bradley, well, the files I sent to the FBI contained enough to ensure he'll spend the rest of his life in a Supermax facility. The distant sound of gunfire erupted outside, federal agents engaging with the Obsidian security team. "It's over," Natalie Vaughn said. "The only question is whether you'll be arrested as an accomplice or eliminated as a liability. Because those are the only options Obsidian's real controllers will leave you." Uncertainty crept into Natalie's eyes. "There's always another option, like shooting me and escaping in the confusion," Vaughn suggested. "It won't work. This entire conversation is being recorded and transmitted to federal authorities. Kill me, and you'll never see Lily again." The mention of their daughter caused Natalie's aim to waver. "Where is she? Is she really safe? Safer than she ever was with you?" Something broke in Natalie then, the calculated operative giving way to a mother's desperation. "I never wanted this for her. You have to believe that. When they told me to target you, to create a relationship as cover, it was just an assignment. I never expected to have a child, to build a life that felt real." Vaughn finished for her. Natalie nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "Theodore has controlled my life since I was 17. After my mother died, he brought me into his world piece by piece. By the time I understood what it really was, I was already implicated in too many operations to escape." The gunfire outside intensified, moving closer to the hangar. "You have one chance," Vaughn said, his voice hardening. "Put down the gun and turn yourself in. Cooperate fully with the authorities. If you do that, if you help dismantle what remains of this organization, I'll make sure Lily knows you tried to do the right thing in the end." Natalie's hand trembled, the weapon becoming heavy in her grip. "They'll kill me in custody. Make it look like suicide, just like Portia." "Not if you have leverage," Vaughn countered, removing a flash drive from his pocket. "Names, dates, offshore account for the people above Theodore and Bradley. The ones who really control Obsidian. Insurance to keep you alive." Hope flickered across Natalie's face. "You do that? After everything?" "Not for you," Vaughn clarified. "For Lily. So she'll know her mother wasn't completely lost." The hangar doors crashed open, federal agents flooding in with weapons raised, shouting commands. Natalie looked from them to Vaughn, then slowly lowered her weapon and placed it on the ground. As agents moved to secure her, she locked eyes with Vaughn one last time. "Tell Lily I'm sorry. Tell her." Her voice broke. "Tell her I did love her. That was never a lie." Vaughn watched impassively as Natalie was led away, her words echoing in his mind. Outside, Bradley was already in custody, his face contorted with rage as agents secured him in a transport vehicle. The elaborate criminal enterprise that had destroyed Vaughn's marriage and threatened his daughter was collapsing in real time all around him. Yet victory felt hollow. In dismantling the threat to Lily, he had also demolished the foundations of her life, exposing her mother as a fraud, her grandfather as a criminal, her stepfather as a dangerous operative. The truth, necessary as it was, would leave scars that might never fully heal. As dawn broke over the airfield, Vaughn stood alone amidst the aftermath of his vengeance, the weight of what came next settling heavily upon him. The battle was won, but the war to give Lily a normal life was just beginning. And somewhere in the chaos, Malcolm Reeves had slipped away, the one loose and Vaughn couldn't account for. A dangerous enemy, now driven by personal vendetta rather than professional assignment. The game had changed, but it wasn't over. Chapter 7: Ashes and Shadows. 3 months after the dramatic raid at the airfield, Vaughn sat in the office of Assistant U.S. Attorney Sofia Mendez, reviewing the latest developments in the case against Obsidian Solutions Group and its principals. "Theodore Keller's testimony has been extensive," Mendez said, sliding a file across her desk. "With his cooperation, we've identified 7 other financial institutions involved in laundering Obsidian funds. The investigation has expanded to 3 continents." "And Bradley?" Vaughn asked, using the name he still associated with his daughter's former stepfather, though the man now answered to his real identity, Preston Rayburn. "Refusing to cooperate. His attorneys are pursuing an aggressive defense, claiming he was an unwitting participant manipulated by Keller." Mendez's expression made clear her opinion of this strategy. "With the evidence you provided, plus Natalie's testimony, he's facing multiple life sentences regardless." Natalie. Even after everything, her name still evoked complicated emotions. She remained in federal custody, her cooperation ensuring protection from both prosecution and the remnants of Obsidian seeking to silence her. Have there been any credible threats against her? Vaughn asked. Mendez nodded grimly. 2 attempts in the first month. We've since moved her to a more secure facility under a different identity. The information she's providing about Obsidian's government contracts has made some very powerful people nervous. Any sign of Malcolm Reeves? Nothing concrete. Intelligence suggests he may have fled to Eastern Europe, but that's unconfirmed. He's resourceful, and now he has a personal vendetta against you. Vaughn had expected as much. Reeves wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully, especially such a public and comprehensive one. We can offer you witness protection, Mendez said, not for the first time. You and your daughter, new identities, relocation. Lily needs stability, not another upheaval, Vaughn replied. And I won't spend my life looking over my shoulder. Reeves will surface eventually. When he does, I'll be ready. After leaving the prosecutor's office, Vaughn drove to his sister Renee's suburban home, where Lily had been staying while he established their new life. The custody situation had been resolved definitively in his favor, given Natalie's circumstances, but he knew the emotional wounds would take much longer to heal. He found Lily in the backyard, helping her aunt plant flowers in the garden. Her face lit up when she saw him, and she raced across the lawn to fling herself into his arms. Dad, did you bring it? Did you? Vaughn smiled, the weight of the past months momentarily lifting. Bring what? I don't remember promising anything. Dad, Lily protested, seeing through his teasing. You promised. The puppy. Oh, that? Vaughn said, pretending to suddenly remember. Well, as it happens. He gestured toward his sister, who was walking around the side of the house with a squirming golden retriever puppy in her arms. Lily's squeal of delight was worth every moment of the nightmare they'd endured. As she raced to meet her new companion, Renee approached her brother. You're spoiling her, she observed, though her tone held no criticism. She deserves some joy after everything she's been through, Vaughn replied, watching as Lily and the puppy tumbled together on the grass. How's the new place coming along? Final security installation tomorrow, then we're clear to move in. Renee studied her brother's face. You really think he'll come for you? Reeves, it's not a question of if, only when, Vaughn replied quietly. But I've taken precautions. The new house is as secure as a government facility, with escape routes and panic rooms. I've engaged round-the-clock surveillance. When he makes his move, we'll be ready. And Lily? How much does she understand about what happened? Vaughn sighed. The child psychologist said to be honest but age-appropriate. She knows her mother did some bad things and is helping the police now. She knows Bradley wasn't who he pretended to be. The rest we'll address when she's older. The conversation paused as Lily ran over to show them how the puppy already knew how to sit on command. After she returned to playing, Renee spoke again. And Natalie? Will Lily ever see her again? That's up to the federal marshals and witness security, Vaughn replied. And ultimately, it will be Lily's decision when she's old enough to make it. That evening, after tucking Lily into bed at Renee's house, Vaughn drove to the new home he'd purchased, a modernist structure on a hilltop with clear sight lines in all directions. The extensive security system alerted him to a potential intrusion at the perimeter, but verification showed only a deer passing through the wooded area behind the property. Inside, he checked each room methodically, a habit from his years in high-risk security work. The house was empty, yet he couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. Intuition or paranoia. In his line of work, the difference had often meant survival. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. She has her eyes. Central Park Playground. Yellow jacket. Tuesday, 3 p.m. Vaughn's blood ran cold. Attached was a photo of Lily at her school, taken earlier that day. He immediately called his surveillance team, demanding to know how someone had gotten close enough for the photo. Their confusion and assurances that the school perimeter had been secure offered no comfort. The message could only have come from Malcolm Reeves. Somehow, despite all precautions, he had reached Lily's school. The implied threat was clear. I can get to her anytime. Vaughn considered his options. The specified meeting was obviously a trap, yet ignoring it would only embolden Reeves. Reporting it to federal authorities would trigger protective measures that might drive Reeves deeper underground without neutralizing the threat. No, this would end only one way: a direct confrontation on terms Vaughn could control. He would attend the meeting, but not in the way Reeves expected. Over the next 3 days, Vaughn made meticulous preparations. Lily and Renee were relocated to a secure facility known only to him. His most trusted former colleagues were positioned strategically around Central Park, creating an invisible security net. Every possible ambush point was identified and countered. When Tuesday arrived, Vaughn approached the playground from an unexpected direction, having altered his appearance with subtle but effective changes. From his position, he had clear sight lines to the playground where children played under parents' watchful eyes. At precisely 3 p.m., a man in a yellow jacket sat on a bench facing the playground. Not Reeves. His build and movement patterns were wrong. A proxy sent to make initial contact or confirm Vaughn's presence. Through his earpiece, Vaughn received confirmation from his team. Yellow jacket is clean. No weapons. Carrying a mobile phone and what appears to be an envelope. Vaughn approached cautiously, taking a seat beside the man while maintaining awareness of his surroundings. "He said you'd come," the man said without looking at Vaughn. "Said you wouldn't risk your daughter." "Where is he?" "Not here." The man slid the envelope across the bench. "He said to give you this. Said it explains everything." As Vaughn reached for the envelope, his instincts screamed a warning. He pulled back just as the man's hand moved to his pocket with unnatural speed. The next moments unfolded in horrifying clarity. Vaughn knocked the man's arm aside as he withdrew not a weapon, but a syringe. The momentum carried the needle into the man's own thigh, and his eyes widened in shock and terror. "Help!" the man gasped, his face already contorting. "He said it wouldn't hurt you. Said it was just to make you sleep." Within seconds, the man began convulsing, drawing screams from nearby parents who grabbed their children and fled. Vaughn's security team converged, establishing a perimeter as the man's body went rigid, then still. The entire incident had been orchestrated not to kill Vaughn, but to send a message and to eliminate the messenger, leaving no connection to Reeves. Inside the envelope was a single photograph. Natalie in her witness protection location, reading a newspaper with yesterday's date clearly visible. Scrawled across the image were the words, "She's next. Then you. Then Lily will be alone. Just like you were." The reference to Vaughn's orphan childhood confirmed Reeves had accessed his complete background. This wasn't just revenge. It was psychological warfare designed to systematically destroy everything Vaughn valued before coming for him directly. As federal authorities took over the scene, Vaughn stepped away, making a call to Assistant U.S. Attorney Mendez. "Reeves has compromised Natalie's location," he said without preamble. "Move her immediately. Full security protocol." "How could he possibly? He has sources inside your operation." Vaughn cut her off. "Someone with access to witness security. Trust no one until you identify the leak." After ending the call, Vaughn made a decision. Defensive measures were no longer sufficient. To protect Lily and end this threat permanently, he would need to take the fight directly to Malcolm Reeves, wherever he was hiding. The hunter was about to become the hunted. Chapter 8: Predator and Prey. The abandoned steel mill stood silhouetted against the night sky, its skeletal structure a monument to industrial decay. Rain pelted the rusted metal, creating an eerie percussion that masked Vaughn's approach through the surrounding wetlands. 72 hours of relentless pursuit had led to this moment. After the Central Park incident, Vaughn had activated a network of contacts stretching from former intelligence operatives to underground information brokers. The trail had led first to a safe house in Newark, then to a money transfer in Philadelphia, and finally to this desolate location 20 miles outside Pittsburgh. According to his intelligence, Malcolm Reeves had established a temporary base of operations here, gathering resources and personnel for what would likely be his endgame move against Vaughn and potentially Natalie. Thermal imaging from a drone pass had confirmed 4 heat signatures inside the main structure. one stationary in what had once been the administrative office, the others patrolling in rotating patterns. Security cameras had been positioned at strategic points around the perimeter, but the recent storm had created power fluctuations that Vaughn could exploit. He approached the east access point during a calculated power dip, using the momentary camera blindness to breach the outer fence. Inside the complex, he moved like a ghost between massive, rusting machinery, his progress deliberate and unhurried. Rushing would create mistakes, and against an opponent like Reeves, a single mistake would be fatal. The first sentry fell silently, a precise sleeper hold rendering him unconscious before he could alert his companions. Vaughn zip-tied the man's hands and feet, then secured him in a drainage culvert, alive but contained. The second guard proved more challenging, his movement pattern less predictable than initial surveillance had suggested. Vaughn was forced to remain motionless behind a collapsed conveyor belt for 18 minutes, rain soaking through his tactical gear, before an opportunity presented itself. Again, he opted for non-lethal neutralization, a decision that wasn't born of mercy but calculation. Bodies created complications and investigations. Unconscious guards could be questioned later. As he approached the administrative building, Vaughn detected the faint blue glow of electronics through the grime-covered windows. Reeves would have established a command center, likely with surveillance feeds and communications equipment. The third guard would be positioned to protect this resource. Rather than risk a frontal approach, Vaughn circled to the roof access, using the external fire escape that groaned treacherously under his weight. The sound was mostly masked by the continuing storm, but he froze when lightning illuminated the area, making him potentially visible to anyone watching. No alarm was raised. He continued to the roof and located the access hatch, carefully testing it for booby traps before proceeding. The interior was pitch black, requiring night vision to navigate the maze of collapsed ceiling panels and rotting office furniture. Below, he could hear voices, a low murmur that suggested at least two individuals in conversation. He positioned himself above a ceiling vent that offered both visual and auditory intelligence. Confirmed the leak has been identified and neutralized, a voice was saying, "Not Reeves, but someone reporting to him. Federal marshals have moved the woman to a new location. We've lost that track for now." "It doesn't matter," came Reeves' distinctive voice, cold and precise. "Mercer is the priority. Once he's eliminated, we can locate the woman and the child at our leisure. The team from Belgrade arrives tomorrow. 6 operators, fully equipped." "We don't wait," Reeves replied. "Mercer's already hunting us. He's proven more resourceful than anticipated. You think he's found this location?" A pause. "It's possible. Enhance perimeter surveillance and activate the secondary security protocols." Vaughn had heard enough. Reeves was expanding his operation, bringing in additional mercenaries for what appeared to be a major offensive. The timetable had accelerated. He needed to end this now, before reinforcements arrived. Moving silently along the ceiling joists, he positioned himself above what appeared to be Reeves' command center. Through gaps in the deteriorating ceiling, he could see computer equipment, weapons, and tactical gear. Reeves sat at a central desk, studying something on a monitor, while his subordinate, a younger man with military bearing, checked surveillance feeds on a separate screen. Vaughn considered his options. A direct assault would be high risk, especially if Reeves had prepared contingencies. But allowing him to continue gathering resources would only make the eventual confrontation more dangerous. The decision was made for him when an alarm suddenly blared from the younger man's console. "Perimeter breach, south quadrant," he reported, reaching for a weapon. Thermal imaging shows a single intruder. On the surveillance screen, Vaughn could see a figure moving through the complex, a deliberate distraction created by one of his own team members right on schedule. "Hendricks, investigate," Reeves ordered. "Maintain communication." Could be local scavengers, could be something else. As the younger man exited, Vaughn prepared to make his move. Reeves, now alone, activated additional security measures, his attention divided between surveillance feeds and what appeared to be evacuation preparations. The ceiling gave way with a controlled crash as Vaughn dropped into the room, landing in a combat-ready stance with his weapon trained on Reeves, who showed no surprise at the intrusion. Calculated risk, Reeves commented, slowly raising his hands. Entering the lion's den directly. Into the line, Reeves, Vaughn replied, keeping a safe distance. Your operation is compromised. Federal tactical teams are en route. Are they? Reeves smiled thinly. Or are you here alone, driven by personal vendetta rather than professional judgment? The Vaughn Mercer I studied wouldn't risk a sanctioned operation with his daughter's safety at stake. The Vaughn Mercer you studied doesn't exist anymore, Vaughn replied coldly. You in Obsidian saw to that when you destroyed my life and threatened my child. Reeves gave a small shrug. Collateral damage in a larger operation. Nothing personal until you made it so. Sending assassins after my daughter made it personal. Insurance policy, Reeves corrected. A rational strategy you would have employed in my position. We're not so different, you and I. Both trained to assess threats and eliminate them efficiently. The difference, Vaughn said, is that I don't target children. A tense silence fell between them, broken only by the distant sound of the alarm still blaring across the complex. What's your endgame here, Mercer? Reeves finally asked. Kill me? Turn me over to authorities? Neither resolves your situation. There are others who will continue what I started. People who consider your knowledge of Obsidian operations an unacceptable liability. I've already dismantled Obsidian, Vaughn replied. Your principals are under indictment or in witness protection. Your offshore accounts are frozen. There's nothing left to protect. Something shifted in Reeves' expression, the first hint of genuine emotion breaking through his professional facade. There's always something left. Always loose ends to eliminate. That's why we're both here, isn't it? To tie up the final loose end in this operation. The radio on Reeves' desk crackled. No sign of the intruder. Possible false alarm from wildlife. Continuing perimeter sweep. Reeves' gaze flickered briefly toward the desk. A momentary tell that Vaughn recognized from years of high-stakes confrontations. There was something on that desk beyond the radio. Something Reeves considered a potential game-changer. Hands on your head, Vaughn commanded, moving to secure Reeves while maintaining awareness of potential threats. Kneel, facing away from the desk. Reeves complied with deliberate slowness. You're making a mistake, Mercer. I'm offering you a way out, for you and your daughter. A permanent resolution. The only resolution is ending the threat you pose, Vaughn replied, securing Reeves' hands behind his back with reinforced zip ties. Whatever you're planning dies here. Once Reeves was restrained, Vaughn approached the desk cautiously, keeping his weapon trained on his prisoner. What he found sent a chill through him. Detailed surveillance photos of Lily at her new school, at Renee's house, even in the supposedly secure facility where he'd relocated them. More disturbing were architectural plans of the building, with security systems marked and potential entry points highlighted. How did you get these? Vaughn demanded, fighting to keep his voice steady. Professional courtesy, Reeves replied with a cold smile. A demonstration of capability. Those photos were taken this morning. Your security measures have already been compromised. My team has established access protocols for when the moment comes. What moment? When I give the order, Reeves said simply, or when I fail to check in at designated intervals. Dead man switch, Mercer. Standard contingency planning. Kill me, imprison me. Either way, protocols activate. Vaughn felt the familiar ice of combat clarity settling over him. If Reeves was telling the truth, and his operational history suggested he would have such contingencies, then simply neutralizing him wouldn't resolve the threat to Lily. What do you want? Vaughn asked, already knowing the answer. Professional resolution, Reeves replied. You disappear permanently. No further pursuit of Obsidian interests or personnel. In exchange, your daughter lives undisturbed. And I'm supposed to trust your word? Trust operational logic, Reeves countered. With you gone, your daughter presents no intelligence risk. Eliminating her creates complications without strategic benefit. My principals are pragmatists, not sadists. The building suddenly shook with an explosion from the south perimeter, Vaughn's extraction team creating a diversion as planned. Alarms blared with renewed urgency. Reeves remained unnaturally calm. Limited time frame now, Mercer. Decision point. Your life for your daughter's safety. The offer expires when reinforcements arrive, for either of us. In the flickering emergency lights, Vaughn studied the man who had become his nemesis. Reeves was a professional, ruthless but rational. If he gave his word on operational grounds, he would likely keep it, if only because breaking it would be inefficient. But there was something in Reeves' eyes, a calculating anticipation that triggered Vaughn's instincts. This was too convenient, too neat a resolution. "Show me the dead man's switch," Vaughn demanded. "Prove it exists." Reeves nodded toward a laptop on the side table. "Access code is Theta 97 Victor. Check the automated protocols folder." Maintaining his weapon's aim, Vaughn accessed the system, finding exactly what Reeves had described. A sophisticated protocol requiring regular authentication to prevent automated execution of pre-programmed commands. The target coordinates matched Lily's location. What Reeves couldn't know was that Vaughn had already moved Lily again after detecting unexplained surveillance activity near the secure facility. The coordinates targeted an empty location. "Satisfied?" Reeves asked. "Almost," Vaughn replied, closing the laptop. "One more thing." Without warning, he struck Reeves with precise force at the base of the skull, rendering him unconscious. Working quickly, he accessed Reeves' communication devices, downloading all data to an encrypted drive. The information would allow him to identify and neutralize the remaining threats in Reeves' network. The building shook with another explosion, closer this time. Extraction was imminent. Vaughn looked down at Reeves' unconscious form, considering his options. Killing him would be the simplest solution, permanent elimination of the threat. But it would also mean crossing a line Vaughn had maintained throughout his career, even during the darkest operations. Instead, he placed an anonymous call to federal authorities, providing the location and evidence of Reeves' activities. Obsidian was already under federal investigation. Its head of security would face justice through legal channels. Before departing, Vaughn left a single item beside Reeves, a chess piece. A black king toppled on its side, the universal symbol of checkmate. As extraction helicopters approached, Vaughn disappeared into the night, carrying with him the means to end the threat to his daughter once and for all. The predator had become the prey, and the hunt was finally over. Chapter 9. Unforgiving. 1 year later, Vaughn stood on the deck of his new home in northern Michigan, watching as Lily played with her dog in the sprawling yard that sloped down to a private lake. Autumn had painted the surrounding forests in brilliant red and gold, creating a postcard-perfect setting that seemed worlds away from the darkness they'd escaped. The final dismantling of Malcolm Reeves' network had taken months of meticulous work. The data extracted from his systems had revealed a complex web of operatives, safe houses, and contingency plans, all of which Vaughn had systematically neutralized with the reluctant assistance of federal authorities. Reeves himself had been sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, his trial conducted under unusual security measures given the sensitive nature of Obsidian's government connections. Theodore Keller had received a reduced sentence in exchange for his comprehensive testimony, while Bradley/Preston faced multiple consecutive life terms. Natalie remained in witness protection, her cooperation continuing to unravel the international aspects of Obsidian's operations. According to Mendez, she asked about Lily regularly, though no direct contact had been established. That decision remained in Vaughn's hands, and so far, he had chosen to maintain distance, not out of cruelty, but concern for Lily's emotional well-being. The child psychologist had advised a gradual approach to reintroducing Natalie into Lily's life, if at all. The sound of tires on gravel interrupted his thoughts. A government-issue SUV approached along the private drive, parking near the front entrance. Assistant U.S. Attorney Mendez emerged, looking more casual than Vaughn had ever seen her in jeans and a light jacket. "Mr. Mercer," she greeted him as he came around from the deck. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." "You said it was important," Vaughn replied, leading her inside the house where Lily couldn't overhear. "Has something happened with Reeves?" "Not Reeves," Mendez said, accepting the coffee he offered. "Natalie. She's been insisting on seeing Lily, becoming quite adamant about it." Vaughn's expression hardened. The court granted me sole custody with visitation at my discretion. Nothing has changed. Legally, no. Mendez agreed. But she's making formal requests through official channels now. Given her continued cooperation, some in the Justice Department are sympathetic. And you? Mendez sighed. I'm here as a courtesy, Vaughn, to warn you that pressure may be coming. Natalie has powerful advocates now. People who see her as instrumental in bringing down a significant national security threat. She was part of that threat, Vaughn reminded her. She helped create it, under duress, according to her testimony. The coercion angle has gained traction with the courts. Vaughn stared out the window at Lily, considering the implications. What does she want exactly? Supervised visitation to start. Eventually, shared custody once her situation stabilizes. No. The word was simple, final. She forfeited that right when she planned to disappear with Lily as part of a criminal enterprise, when she allowed my daughter to be used as leverage in their operations. She claimed she was protecting Lily from worse alternatives. Mendez said that Theodore threatened both of them if she didn't comply with his plans. And her initial targeting of me, her false marriage, was that protection too? Mendez had no answer for that. I need you to understand something, Vaughn continued, his voice quiet but intense. I've forgiven many things in my life, betrayals, injuries, even attempts on my life. But I will never, never forgive anyone who endangers my child. Natalie crossed that line. So did Theodore. So did Bradley. There is no coming back from that. The courts may not see it that way, Mendez warned. They tend to favor maternal relationships when possible. Let me be perfectly clear, Vaughn said, leaning forward. If the courts attempt to force this issue, I will release everything I have on Obsidian's government connections. Every contract, every operation, every official who looked the other way. The complete data set that I extracted from Reeves' systems, but never fully disclosed to your department. Mendez paled slightly. That would compromise ongoing cases, jeopardize national security. Then I suggest you make that clear to whoever is advocating for Natalie, Vaughn replied. My priority is my daughter's safety and well-being. Nothing else matters. After Mendez departed, Vaughn remained in his study, reviewing the extensive security measures that protected their new home. The property was registered under a corporate entity with no connection to his name. Their electronic footprint was minimal, their movements unpredictable. He had created a fortress, not of walls and alarms, but of anonymity and strategic precaution. Lily's laughter drifted through the open window as she played with her friend from the neighboring property, the first real friendship she developed since the upheaval. The child psychologist had reported significant progress in her emotional recovery, noting that the stability of their new life was helping her process the traumatic events of the past. That evening, as he tucked Lily into bed, she asked the question she occasionally revisited. Dad, will I ever see Mom again? Vaughn sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. Your mom is still helping the police with some very important work. It makes it difficult for her to visit right now. But someday, when you're older, you'll have choices about that, he said truthfully. And I'll support whatever you decide. Lily considered this, her young face thoughtful. Bradley wasn't a good person, was he? No, he wasn't. And Grandpa Theodore? Vaughn sighed. He made some very bad decisions that hurt a lot of people. What about Mom? Did she make bad decisions too? The question hung in the air between them, weighted with implications beyond Lily's understanding. Vaughn had promised never to lie to his daughter, even when the truth was difficult. Yes, he said finally, she did, but she's trying to make better ones now. This seemed to satisfy Lily, who nodded solemnly before changing the subject to her upcoming science project. After finishing their bedtime routine, Vaughn kissed her forehead and turned out the light, leaving the door slightly ajar, as she preferred. In his study, he opened the secure laptop that maintained his monitoring systems. The regular status reports from his security team showed no unusual activity around their perimeter or in the digital surveillance of potential threats. Natalie remained at her witness protection location in Arizona. Malcolm Reeves remained in maximum security at ADX Florence. Theodore Keller was serving his reduced sentence at a medium security facility in Pennsylvania. The final screen showed a real-time location ping from Bradley/Preston's prison transport, currently en route to a federal courthouse for an appeal hearing. The tracking device had been planted by one of Vaughn's contacts in the Marshals Service, providing an extra layer of security that official channels wouldn't offer. As he was about to close the laptop, an alert flashed on the screen, an unexpected deviation in the transport route. The vehicle had turned onto a secondary road, away from the designated secure path to the courthouse. Vaughn immediately activated enhanced tracking, watching as the transport continued along isolated country roads. This wasn't a standard route change. It was completely off protocol. He made a quick call to his contact in the Marshals Service, who promised to investigate immediately. Within minutes, the response came back. No authorized route change had been logged. The transport wasn't responding to communication attempts. Vaughn watched the tracking screen with growing apprehension as the transport came to a stop in a remote area. The signal remained stationary for 17 minutes, then began moving again, but at a much higher speed and in the opposite direction. An hour later, the news broke across emergency channels. A federal prisoner transport had been attacked by unknown assailants. 2 marshals dead. The prisoner, Preston Rayburn, formerly known as Bradley Hoffman, missing and presumed extracted by the attackers. Vaughn's security protocols activated automatically. Additional personnel deployed to the perimeter of his property. Surveillance drones launched to monitor the surrounding area. Evacuation vehicles prepared for immediate departure if necessary. But even as these measures unfolded, Vaughn knew they were likely unnecessary. This wasn't about him or Lily, not directly. This was about Obsidian protecting its interests. Bradley/Preston knew too much, had been too deeply embedded in their operations. His testimony, should he choose to provide it, could implicate figures far beyond those already exposed. His extraction wasn't an attack on Vaughn. It was damage control by powers that remained in the shadows. Still, prudence demanded preparation. Vaughn sent a coded message to Renee, activating their emergency protocols. Within 30 minutes, she arrived to stay with Lily while he addressed the potential threat. "Is it happening again?" Renee asked quietly as they stood in the kitchen, out of Lily's earshot. "Precautionary measures only," Vaughn assured her. "I don't believe we're targeted, but I need to verify." For the next 3 days, Vaughn worked tirelessly, leveraging every contact and resource to track Bradley/Preston's extraction team. The trail led through 3 states before going cold at a private airfield in New Mexico, a familiar pattern suggesting the same networks that had nearly helped Natalie and Bradley escape a year earlier. Analysis of communication patterns and financial transactions confirmed his initial assessment. This was an internal Obsidian matter. Bradley had been extracted not to pursue vengeance against Vaughn, but to prevent further exposure of Obsidian's government connections. As the immediate threat assessment downgraded, Vaughn maintained enhanced security but allowed life to return to relative normalcy. Lily resumed school. Their daily routines continued, and the autumn days passed in a rhythm that offered healing and stability. 2 weeks after Bradley's extraction, Vaughn received an encrypted message from a source deep within federal intelligence circles. Rayburn terminated. Obsidian protocols. File closed. The message confirmed what Vaughn had suspected. Bradley had been eliminated by his own organization, a loose end tied permanently. The threat he might have posed, either as a witness or as an enemy, was neutralized. That evening, as Lily recounted her day's adventures over dinner, Vaughn found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The facade of his marriage had crumbled, revealing a complex conspiracy that had nearly destroyed everything he valued. Yet from those ashes, he had forged something new, a life defined not by deception, but by clarity of purpose and unyielding protective resolve. He had never been a forgiving man. Those who betrayed him, who threatened what he loved, found no mercy in his response. Natalie had discovered this truth. Theodore had learned it from his prison cell. Bradley had understood it in his final moments, executed by the very organization he had served. And should anyone else ever threaten Lily's safety or happiness, they would discover the same immutable fact. Von Mercer's vengeance was as patient as it was absolute, as methodical as it was merciless. But for now, listening to his daughter's laughter echoing through their home, Von allowed himself to embrace the peace they had earned. The demons had been vanquished, the shadows dispelled. The future stretched before them, not unmarked by the past, but no longer defined by it. In this moment, at least they were safe. And for Von Mercer, unforgiving protector, ruthless advocate, devoted father, that was enough. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.